Thank you so much for clicking on this video. It really does mean a lot to me. And yes, I do have a mustache. It's been taking me a little over a month to grow. It's a little caterpillar, but my wife likes it, so we'll keep it going. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I didn't speak about fire, police, or militaries like I often do. I spoke with a guy named James Downey, very intelligent young man, who owns a little business called School Board Audit. And he also has schoolboardaudit.com, and then on Facebook you can find him at School Board Audit. And if you pay attention to any politics or a lot of the news, there's been a lot of issues going on in the entire country with a lot of school boards and especially superintendents and letting them teach children things that a lot of parents really don't want their children being taught. So if you don't know anything about what's going on in our country with school boards, I highly recommend that you just listen to this episode, but also go gather your own information. Educate yourself on what has been going on and what you believe and don't believe in, and also things that you think children should be taught and shouldn't be taught. So this is all on your personal opinion on how you think things should be. And that's the best part about this country. We can all have our own opinions. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that little notification bell that alerts you whenever I make new content, and enjoy the episode, folks. James Downey.
Matt Sumpo.
Are you related to Robert Downey Jr.?
I get that question a lot, actually. So with my job, I travel all the time. So I'm effectively gone half the time. And inevitably, for 10 years, I've been doing this and I've been getting this question. And I used to just say, no, I'm not really. But now what I typically say is, actually, yes, we are related. He's my cousin. But he's Iron Man and I'm actually Copper Man. So I'm softer and worth way less than he is, but yes.
That's actually not that bad. That's not that bad at all. So, what do you do for work?
So for work, I'm a regional sales manager for a company. The name of the company is probably irrelevant, but what we do is we make a product. It's a niche product that goes to power plants, oil refineries. So I travel the country. I cover a territory that is Minnesota all the way down to Missouri, everything east up to Maine, half of Canada, and then Puerto Rico. So it's a big swath of geography, right? But I just go to power plants, nuclear power plants, oil refineries, and then our product is an integral part of making the whole operation work.
So to a lot of the left party or the Democrat Party, you're an evil man.
Oh yeah, oil and gas, yeah, for sure.
Gas, they hate. Person.
It's the ironic thing about that is those folks on the left, they love power, right? They crave it. They want to have power over people. And we're actually providing power for people, actual power that powers your home or whatever.
Yeah. Well, with nuclear power, there's a lot of stuff being done on that. Now, obviously, we had the three big, huge incidents with nuclear energy power, but but nuclear energy with the effective, as much power as you will utilize in your life from nuclear energy, you can fit the what is it called? Not the discharge of it, but basically the pollution of it underneath your table. That's how small it is. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool watching. I watch YouTube videos on nuclear power plants, starting up, the reactors starting up.
Yeah, it's
pretty
cool.
And amidst that blue light, somehow, I don't know how that happens. I thought it was just LEDs in there, but apparently it's actually some reaction that's going on.
Yeah, when I go to these nuclear plants, they don't let me get very far in. Put it that way. Yeah. So there's usually, when you go to a nuclear plant, they've got their actual operation. And then before you get there, there's going to be an administrative building. And I just go when we sit and talk at things at the administrative building.
Yeah. So I'd be like, can I go see your...
I've asked.
Your power plant or your power things? And then they'd be like, no, dude, you're a moron.
Yeah.
You couldn't understand
pretty much what they tell me, right? So I went to one in Illinois, and I did not have an appointment, and in sales... Hey, I'm not going to drive past something and not at least pop in and see if I can get in. I was like, this is early on with this particular job, and I'm like, maybe I'll just I've had some luck. I'll go to a power plant, I'll go to the guard shack, and I'll just say who I am, and somebody will actually end up seeing me. So I actually went up to the guard shack and told them who I was and what I was doing, and they did not find that amusing. And he actually positioned his hand to his pistol. And was like, you need to get the F out of here. So I was like, all right, I will make a mental note. Don't ever try to go to a power plant without having an official appointment again. So
really,
yeah, they take it pretty seriously, as they really need to.
As you should.
I mean, it's a pretty big deal.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
But it is clean energy, and it's funny to me how many people, they want wind, they want solar, which I mean, we could get into that. This, especially wind energy, it's not actually very clean at all. I mean, you should see the volume of oil that has to go into these wind turbines, and that has to be changed out at least every year.
Well, how many birds a year are killed from windmills?
That's a great. I don't know the answer to that, but
Well,
I know it's a lot.
That's
I
a
mean,
lot of
it's
birds.
a
That
ton.
are, like, how many species are getting closer to extinction because of windmills?
Yeah.
And if you use, there's so much involved. There's certain aspects of wind power, or like using a wind turbine, and there's like even fracking. Like there's benefits. There's pros and cons to everything. But with nuclear, there's not a whole. The amount of cons are pretty minuscule, but the effect of a huge issue that happened, like in what was
Fukushima,
Fukushima, and then
Chernobyl,
and that was they were with Chernobyl. From my understanding, is there was a protocol that they were blatantly disregarding, and just kept going on past the alarms that they were getting, and then that's when they had that reaction. They were doing some type of a test and just kept pushing all the basically red buttons are saying, "Hey, you need to stop." They're like, "Don't worry about that.
Oh, we know better. Yeah,
We'll be okay." And
this
then,
is Russia. We know.
the mother of Russia will protect us. No, it don't.
No, actually, it does not. Right.
How'd it work out for you, Chernobyl? Your 4 arms and 6 eyes. A bunch of losers.
Right.
So, but with nuclear energy, it's pretty clean, and I mean, it's extremely powerful.
It really is, and it's a shame how many are being shut down in favor of an inferior product that, is not nearly as clean anyway. I mean, you look at these solar panels and just the hydraulic fluid that moves the panels. That stuff is highly toxic, and it doesn't break down easy. And that's another thing with the wind turbines. Those actual the blades themselves are huge, and it takes, I can't even remember what the half-life of these things are, but you can't even put them in a traditional like landfill because they don't break down. It takes forever for these things to start breaking down, and they're absolutely huge. So
I know I've been to like windmill farms and stuff like up on the north side of Indiana, and seeing how many those are. I'm like, man, yeah. I mean, it's insane how large they are. But I mean, even with what was I was gonna just say? There was an idea that popped in my head. Sorry, dude, that just really just escaped me.
that's all right. Hey, that happens.
It does. But anyways, so you do school board audits.
I do, yes.
You created this thing, and I like your shirt. It says "Make School Boards Great Again." I wonder who that's modeled after. Listen, folks, we need to make school boards great again, please. Listen to James here, not a cousin of Robert Downey Jr.
That's brilliant. Yes.
Hey, thank you.
That's
I need
awesome.
to work on it. I need to get a hat or a hairpiece. So
oh my gosh, that's great.
you started this little thing, and it's on Facebook, and then you also have a website, schoolboardaudit.com, which I'll post the link in that underneath the video.
Thanks.
Or even in the description as well. Why did you start doing this to where you're auditing school boards?
It's a great question. So when what prompted us to do this is we have 2 daughters. Right, one went all the way through Center Grove. She graduated last year, and we have another daughter who's in 8th grade. And if you don't advocate for your kid, no one's going to. And what we have seen since our oldest was in elementary school, there was this this movement towards like TBRI and SEL, and high achieving kids were kind of being, I don't want to say ostracized or kind of pushed aside, but we were just having some issues with our kids.
Would you be able to explain what SEL and TBRI is?
Sure. So I'll narrow this down, but like there's a philosophy that when you and I were going to school, well, especially definitely me, you're definitely younger than I am. But when I was going to school, if you got in trouble, you got in trouble. You got sent to the principal's office. You got detention. You got demerits. Whatever. Ultimately, you get kicked out of school. And there was a consequence, get your name on the board, check marks, whatever. So there was some type of progressive discipline. But now, if you've got kids that can really do some really nasty, horrible things, and because they're, have an IEP or something like a individual educational plan, they're basically untouchable. So instead of being disciplined in a traditional way, they are, talked to, right? So it's not even a timeout. It's more like, how are you feeling? What's going on? All this stuff. And then there's nothing that happens, right? And the focus is on them, right? So, and I will give an example. So for our youngest daughter, there was a kid that had this IEP, and this is when they were doing this. I can't remember what TBRI stands for, but they were taking this approach for it, and he actually put his hands down his pants, right, the backside, right. So and he smears this on my daughter's face.
Poop.
Yeah.
Oh no!
I called them butthole hands, right? So I'm obviously absolutely livid about this, and they weren't going to do anything.
Trust-based relational intervention.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well done.
There's no reason to remember that anyways. It's stupid.
It is. So
I will be the defendant on it here today.
so the so that happened, and we were obviously very upset about it. But
and how old was this child at the time?
Third grade.
Third grade.
So we're still dealing with a youngin', and I'm not suggesting that the kid should be expelled, but pulling him aside, what they effectively did was when that incident happened, they didn't call us for one. We had to find out about this when my daughter came home, but they took him out of the classroom and let him go play basketball because he was overly stressed and he needed to be able to get his energy out. That was the thought, right? So in doing so, the focus, and this is the point, in that scenario, the focus became about the victimizer and not the victim, right? So my daughter is pushed aside and just said, well, he's got issues, whatever, just deal with it basically. And, they cleaned her up or whatever, didn't bother calling home and put all the attention on him and trying to make sure that he's, in a good place, whatever. And that just didn't sit well with us. I mean, that I didn't want her in the classroom with him anymore, et cetera. So we start trying to, create an environment for our kid. I can't control what they do for other kids. It's not my thing, right? But I have to find ways to protect my own child. So that really escalated things. And that was 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So for us, we've been fighting this battle for a good long time. And in the last election in 2020, we walked into the voting booth, and I knew there was one person on the school board I did not want to vote for. And I tried to do some research on the other candidates, and there was nothing out. I just couldn't find anything out there. Aside from yard signs that you would see, there really wasn't any good information out there. So I thought in that moment, I thought, you know what, I wish someone would just put something together, right? And then as we've seen these changes that have taken place and more problems that have come up, and now, Clark Pleasant and other school districts adding these diversity, equity, inclusion, coordinators into the programs.
Now, couldn't that be a good thing for students to learn about diversity and inclusivity?
It could be, depending on the situation, mm-hmm. I will say this. Mm-hmm. If I tend to believe that if things are a really good idea, then I'm a free market capitalist, then they should stand on their own. So if you want to have critical race theory, if you want to have, diversity, equity, inclusion, which I will say this, that position is sold as being someone who will never be around kids. That position is sold as being someone who is more administrative role. They're in the background, whatever, but they don't come to kids. Well, Clark Pleasant is dealing with a mask mandate, and their DEI coordinator is videoed and photographed being in the classroom with the kids, which they're not really supposed to be. And she's unmasked, and she's unapologetically unmasked. I mean, she gets called out on Facebook, and she's just like, deal with it. I don't care, yeah. So that position in and of itself is supposed to be about maybe a higher level, not getting involved with the kids. But if it's a good idea, then let it stand on its own. Don't make it mandatory. So if you want to have, a path for parents to say, I do want my kids to learn these things. I do think it's important for them to read, these, and maybe obscure, but maybe to them it's important books, like the Book of Negroes or things like that. That is, I have not personally read, but I think it's probably an important book that people who want to have the opportunity to read should be able to, and there's a laundry list of these books. And if that's something that is important to that family and they think it's as popular as they believe it is, then have that as a learning track. Don't force it on every single kid in the classroom. Just allow it to be something that is an option. You can choose band or you can choose choir. Mm-hmm. You can choose to take these classes or not. And the concepts are pretty highbrow anyway. It requires, some discernment and some understanding of, history and some experience, really to compare and contrast these things. So pushing this in elementary school and then pushing it in middle school, that's far too early. Far too early. I mean, and the SEL thing really came about because school shootings, I guess, that's the guise of what they've introduced this thing with. Traditional SEL has been in schools forever. I mean, it really has. And I think there's a lot of teachers that view SEL through that prism still. And that's fine. That's what their experience. But what we're dealing with now is transformative SEL. And we're not teaching CRT, but the SEL programs are introducing CRT concepts. So to bring this back to the school board, right? The reality is that all these curriculums are approved at school board levels. And you start looking into, who do you want to represent you at the schools? Because the superintendent is hired by the school board. The superintendent, you have no control over what they're going to do. You have no control over the superintendent, what administrative staff he's going to put together, what teachers he's going to hire, what curriculum they're going to accept and put in. You have no control over that. That is completely outside of your sphere of influence. But you can have an impact because you can choose the voice of the community, which is supposed to be the school board. The school board is not supposed to be just a rubber stamp for whatever the administration wants. It should be something that, hey, listen, this is something that is important to the community. We've got lots of emails about it, whatever. We've talked to people and they feel very strongly about this. So we're not going to do that. And that's not what's happening here. What's happening is that whatever, and it's not just Center Grove. I'm digging into this. It's amazing some of the things that we're uncovering. But at the end of the day, it's the administration and the school board working in conjunction to push whatever the administration wants, really. And so just looked at some of the voting results from 2020. And what I found very interesting was there were 3 seats available in Franklin and 3 people ran. And so there was no competition. And those 3 leaned left for sure, right? Same thing held true in Greenwood. I think there was 2 seats in Greenwood, 2 people ran. And at Indian Creek, or what do they call that? Hensley something. Anyway, Indian Creek, that school, Nineveh. They end up having 2 seats available, I think it's 2 seats, and they only had 2 people run. So it's like there's not even any competition. So if you have no one running to maybe be the counterbalance, and even if it was these people are hardcore on the right, you at least want to have some kind of counterbalance. I would think you don't want to just appoint people because then they can just kind of do whatever they want. And I think that's, to me, spoke to a lack of education amongst the community. And I felt like, people need to know who they're voting for because these people play a big role. And it's not just, there's 2 aspects of what we're trying to do as school board audit. It's, we want to give the voter enough information about each school board member that when they go into the voting booth, they can feel confident that they want to vote for this person or not, right? But we also want to encourage people to go out there and run for school board. We need some new blood, and we need some good people to get up and run for these school boards. You have board members who have no kids in the system, which, is that a problem or not? I don't know. I guess it depends on your perspective. For me personally, I feel like you should have some skin in the game. If your kid is actively going to the school, maybe you'll be a little more willing to listen to, what's going on with parents and with your own child and what they want, in the classroom. If you have no kids in the school system, I mean, I don't even know what your reasoning would be to even want to be on the school board. But I think that people haven't ran in the past because how do you run for school board? I mean, where do you begin? Where do you market? Where do you do this stuff? So I just decided if you want to run, then I put together kind of the packet that you have that you turn in to your local election office to announce your candidacy. So I kind of put that packet together. I'll send them an email with that. And then we are dedicating a campaign page to each person, just like we dedicate a page for each board member. If you want to run, it's free. We're not asking for anything. You just fill out our questionnaire so we know who you are because we don't have any voting record, obviously, to base anything on. So you fill out the questionnaire and we just curate a page of your values and what you stand for. So when someone goes into the voting booth, they can say, I like this person or I don't, So that's really what we decided to do is, inform the public as best we can, and we just hope that whether the community agrees with our position or not is, we hope they do, but it's pretty much irrelevant. At the end of the day, this is something that the board should represent the community. So there's going to be communities that are going to be very pro CRT. I mean, I'm thinking about Marion County. There's going to be school districts that.
And CRT stands for critical race theory.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. And I have seen some of the PowerPoints in it, because obviously I try to stay towards like what is it that everybody's talking about. And I follow politics. If you don't follow politics at home, or even to yourself, I find that to be that's your personal choice. But also, when you're going to sit there and complain about stuff going on and you haven't been paying attention to politics recently, culture is just downstream from politics.
Correct.
And I can't remember the guy who said that. He's dead now, but he brought that up a few years back, and it's so true, because you see how cultures turn. And what I mean by culture, you watch how what's being pushed in media, what's being pushed on TV, what's being pushed on our kids' phones or in our own phones. And you see what's going on, and then you turn around and say, well, what's politics going to do? It's going to follow whatever's the most popular thing. That way they can catch more eyes and more views, or more votes.
And dollars, yeah.
And obviously more dollars. And if you don't follow along, you're going to get kicked out and excommunicated. You're going to get pushed out. And with school boards, if you do any type of research on your own about school boards and issues going on right now, you'll be flooded with videos. Now, obviously, if you're using like Google search, you might get some of the some things throttled back. But if you use DuckDuckGo, which I highly recommend using DuckDuckGo as a research engine, you will find that school boards across America are having enormous issues with parents trying to speak up and say, hey, we don't want our kids being taught this kind of stuff. Because like if you look at the PowerPoints, it's pretty racist towards a certain group of people.
Right.
And that group of people, it doesn't matter who it is, but it is pushing down a set of people due to race. And I've seen some of the PowerPoints myself, and it's pretty bad. Like one of them said that if tardiness is only what was it? Tardiness, being on time is a part of being white. And when I read that, I'm like, that's pretty racist against black people, because white people are just as tardy as anybody else.
Absolutely.
So why are you singling out a race for that? It's not like, just because you're black, you're tardy. No, but they're insinuating that in it. And they're saying, well, blame the white people because they're on time. No, everybody's late.
I was 10 minutes late getting here today.
You were 10 minutes, and you're a white dude. How dare you?
I know, right?
But that to me is like, why are we having to, like, it doesn't matter. Like you're a guy. And if there's a person in here that's a different color, I don't care.
Matters not.
I don't care what color you are, as long as you're a good person. But we've gotten away from that. We are into identity politics.
Yes.
And that is also infiltrated into school boards as well. And school boards are letting things happen, which, have your opinions or not, do your own research. I highly suggest looking up what has been going on, what's being taught to kids. Look into it yourself. Read some of the PowerPoints, and that's all I will say. I'll just tell you how I feel about it. I disagree with it. I don't think children should be forced to be told, hey, there is a race that is better than another, or there's a race that's worse than another. That's completely wrong. I think that's just wrong to be teaching children. And there's also things that are very inappropriate that are being taught to children. And school boards are hiring these teachers and these people to come in and work with them on basically like, hey, how can we, they have one set of values only. And it seems to be whatever the far left wants. And to be honest, if you look into it politically, the far left runs schools.
100%.
They run schools, they run media, they truly do, which there should be a balance. Like what you were saying earlier, there should be a balance on both sides.
And that's where the school boards become very important, because
correct. And there's not much of a balance.
There isn't. And I think this is where parents, you make a good point. I was having you do something like this, you inevitably get some people who are against it, and they're going to throw some shade at it, and that's fine. I mean, I have no problem with this. I was commenting to one Facebook user that was kind of trashing it, and that's fine. That you have the First Amendment right. You're entitled to say whatever it is you want to say, good or bad, about what we're doing. It doesn't bother me. It's fine. we just hope you find some value in the site. If it's something where this person voted against a mask mandate and you're for a mask mandate, you know now not to vote for that person if you feel that strongly about it. So it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. The information is the information, right? So I was talking to Joe Hubbard. He's the vice president of the Center Grove School Board just recently. Great guy. I mean, he is, of all the school board members that I've met and talked with, he's by far the one that is the most open and most available to the community. And we were having some good dialogue about some things, and I pointed out that in the voting record, he's voted no more than any of the other school board members in the last year. But Jack Russell, the president, actually voted no on some things at a higher click. And whether those were good things or not, I don't know. He was voting no more on financial matters dealing with Sugar Grove Elementary. But anyway, the point is that even though there were some no votes at a higher rate than other school boards, every resolution passed. Everything passed. So there were 95 motions presented in the last 2 years at Center Grove, and all of them were implemented. So, and my thinking on that was, and Joe made the point that there's a lot of negotiation that takes place in these private sessions, because you don't want to vote on something and then shoot it down and then wait another month to approve it. So you have to kind of do that. And I think that's reasonable, right? The question is that if you've got 95 things that are passing and 0 that are being rejected, are you voting on enough things then? Are you talking about enough things? Maybe there's more things that you should be talking about, in the public sphere, because people are clearly upset. And, my thing is that we have a great view of what the last 40 years of the public education system and this Marxist indoctrination, let's call it what it is, that's been going on in our school systems this whole time. We got a great glimpse into that in last year in all the cities that were burning on fire, looting, rioting, all those things. I mean, this is a product of what came out of the public education system, and the future of our country right now is sitting in these classrooms. And that's really what compelled us to we have got to do something, because it's not just that we want to fight for our kid, because we are really trying to help, curb this anti-American, feel bad about who you are, push that's going into the public school system. We're trying to have a hedge on that, because a lot of people are pulling their kids out, and that's your choice. And
I think it's for good reason.
And I think it's for very good reason.
I think it's a very good reason to pull your own child out into private education.
I think there's some real legitimacy and some really, really great reasons to do that. And it's something that we could easily do. My wife's been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. The reasons that we haven't done it is because we have 2 kids that are so rooted in Christ as the foundation that and we talk to our kids like I'm talking to you now. We've always talked to them about these issues. I don't have any concern that the indoctrination is going to stick. But what I do know is that if we decide to pull our kid out, then we've also disengaged from the fight ourselves. Now, there are red lines. There are lines in the sand that if it comes down to it and this happens, we will be pulling our kid out immediately. And as long as they're protected, as long as they're not getting caught in the crossfire, we're gonna keep at it. We're gonna stay engaged. We're gonna stay in the fight. But to fight really hard, you have to have some skin in the game, right? So our kid is in the school, and we want to make that school the best school possible for her and for the rest of the kids. And hopefully that will spread to other schools, which will then spread to the whole country. And I'm not saying that school board audit is going to be able to do that, but if it's a cog in a wheel that's going to start pushing things just back to a pro-liberty, pro-America, viewpoint, I think that's going to end up ultimately being a big win. So maybe in 30 years when we're looking at things and we're old and gray, maybe it'll be better. And maybe it started with this pushback of education, and these parents are upset with their school boards because they have not been represented, they have not been heard, and they're getting this homework, and they're appalled by it.
there was something that Tennessee did last year that the only reason why I follow that is because my aunt's a teacher there in Tennessee. And they did a form that they sent out to parents stating, you will not watch over your child's shoulder what we're teaching your child.
Oh, my.
And when that came out, I was like, that's really interesting. If you're somebody who just signs whatever, not reading it, that can be a problem, because you could be signing away a lot of things that you don't want to sign away, or things that you don't understand fully, like the whole agreement thing for, like, if you have an Apple phone, which I think is an inferior phone, you should have an Android. They're all great. If you don't read a lot of the agreements, if you sit there and read it, it'll probably take you 2, 3, 4 hours to read it.
Oh, yeah.
But there's going to be some stuff in there like, oh, we can invade your privacy that you're going to skim over. Well, if you're just signing the paperwork, what are they teaching your kids? That they don't want your parents looking over the shoulder just like, hey, I'm going to kind of see how it's going. What are you talking about in there? Like, they're telling you that white people are bad? And there's no race that's above another. There is no race. We are all equal.
Yes.
But they're teaching that there is a race that is beneath another race. That's considered racism. And I've heard the argument of black people can't be racist. That's BS.
That's wrong.
Anybody can be racist. And I do not like it one bit. I don't like racism one bit. Now, there's prejudices. There's things that people will have. I can't stop that. I mean, you can't stop somebody from being racist. You can do certain things that will stop that, but people will have their own thoughts. You can't stop people from having their own thoughts, but they are wanting to induce thoughts into our children's minds that are pretty toxic thoughts. And I spoke with a student not too long ago about it, and I said, how's everything going at school? And this was last year when he was still in school, and he said, it's annoying. I'm like, well, why is that? And he said, and we spoke about this before. He said, well, my teacher's making us write a story about a certain author. And I said, well, okay, so what's annoying about it? He said, well, she's only making us pick a black gay author that we have to write a story about. And I said, well, that narrows it down to maybe 3 or 5. I truly don't know
for sure.
Maybe there's a huge, array of those types of people, which whatever. But why is she doing that? He goes, well, man, she's far leftist, and that's all she does all year. She just pushes it on us. I'm like, really? She just pushes it on you? Yeah, like it's a problem, because all we learn about is like Marxism. I'm like, you know about that? He's like, what do you think about it? He goes, well, the way she teaches it seems pretty nice. I'm like, on paper, it sounds pretty nice. In reality, go look at any other country that has used it or utilizes it now and see where they're at. Communism, same thing. Socialism, same thing. Now, I've had the discussions of which somebody recently was telling me there's a difference between socialism and social planning or social programs, which I can understand that. Sorry, I'm talking way too much in this.
Oh, no, you're good.
But there's differences in things that people will say, they'll say police and firefighters and highways and state highways and libraries, that's all socialism. That's incorrect. That is very incorrect. That is not a form of socialism. That is social programs that we have in place, that you have to have protections of the people for criminals. Because if you're going to be going after a lot of criminals, you'll be going after a lot of politicians, to be honest.
Right, absolutely.
That's a whole other topic that we can talk about. But there's social programs that have to be in place to protect the citizens of the country or state or locality or municipality, that's where it comes with your local police departments, your state troopers, and you got your sheriffs for your counties, and then you have your fire departments. You have your municipalities, and then you have your fire districts. There's certain reasons you have to have those, because obviously back in the day we're like, oh my gosh, we're having so many fires, we have to all get a bucket brigade going.
Easy for you to say.
It's a very easy word for me to say. And then thank God Benjamin Franklin came around and created the first fire department out in Boston. Good man.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Then today is where we're at with where that came from. Now, are there things that sound really nice that would be beneficial for our country? Yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, free Medicare sounds fantastic, but it's not free. It costs money. Look at any other country. There's people that I've met that are from Canada. They're like, oh, it's great until you have like something go on, like really wrong. Like you break your arm, you'll be sitting in the ER for anywhere between 6 to 36 hours with a broken arm, because they take who's the worst. Well, how many people you got coming into this hospital that are worse than what you are. Or you can go anywhere you want here and you get care within, I would say, within an hour and a half at most.
At most, right.
Now, there are those outlying cases where there's some extreme stuff happening. Or you're firing nurses and doctors because they won't get vaccinated, and then now you're understaffed
in the middle of a quote pandemic. Pandemic.
So there's COVID's real. There's things I have to say for YouTube, so I don't get kicked off. COVID's very real. It is very serious. Go get vaccinated. Make your own choice.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry,
no,
I keep talking way too long. But with school boards,
but you make a good point, though, and I would just to kind of recap what you're saying or summarize it. The term that I always think of is that it's a very important term that's enshrined in our Constitution, and it's the consent of the governed, right? And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. So when you have police, local, firefighter, all these services, it's all to the benefit of the community and of the society at the consent of the governed. If it ends up being something tyrannical, well, then you're not going to have the consent of the governed anymore, and it's time to shed it and erect something different. So that exists. I think it's largely taken out of context by a small group of people who just want total anarchy. But when you think in terms of, I don't really like labeling myself one thing or another. If I had to put a label on it, I guess I'm an independent, but I would never ever vote for a Democrat. But there's lots of Republicans I haven't voted for either.
I will tell you this though: if you would have asked me back in 2006, 2007, who would you vote for in the presidential primaries? I would have, for president, I would have told you Barack Obama, because I remember in school, everybody was pushing hardcore. Well, he'll be the first black president.
Yeah, that matters.
Right? He'll bring the country together, and it sounded really awesome. Which, just because he's a black guy doesn't mean that he should be anything. Just because he's a white guy, it doesn't mean he should be anything. Just because he's whatever color doesn't dictate. Well, he should be in that position just because of his color. That doesn't make any sense to me. What are his values? I don't care what color you are. What are your values? And there was an opportunity there that he could have brought the country together, which I think, in my eyes, it seemed to be where it was more beneficial. But I didn't follow politics early at that stage of my life because I was still in school. I was pretty young at that age.
That's still impressionable. Under 24,
very impressionable.
Your brain
but
isn't fully developed.
Yeah, but I was being told by everybody at school and teachers alone that he's doing a fantastic job, that he's the greatest president we've ever had. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, this is great. Like, this is fantastic. And then I get out of high school and I start paying more taxes because I got jobs. And then I'm realizing, like, oh my gosh, like these people are getting what?
Yeah.
They're getting Obamacare. Okay, how well is that working out for them? Well, my job that I've got, that I get to see people that are on Obamacare, I'm like, that is not that great. It's not beneficial. There's a lot of programs that were going on. There's some things that he did that was pretty good, and I'll admit that. I'm waiting for Joe Biden to do something great. Still waiting. Which, if I just say to people, just follow what the facts are. Follow your own intuitions on what you believe, but still what's morally correct. Now, with the school boards, the issues that I've had, let's tie this together with the president and with school boards. What is it that the School Board Association came to the federal? Came to the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, and said that we have tyrannical domestic terrorist parents that are threatening our school board members, who are insinuating violence. It's an insurrection. I even heard that word, an insurrection in school board meetings. They're unmasked. They're trying to be violent. There was an adult male that was arrested because his daughter. Now this is a crazy case for me. The Loudoun County,
right?
The
Ground Zero,
father.
Really.
Yes, where a lot of this is sparked up, and not just for one reason, for multiple reasons which they've had. They're not doing pretty good out in Loudoun County. Do you know what's been going on out there with that man's daughter who was raped? Okay, obviously. Do you want to explain the story? Or do you want me to explain it?
You're already on a roll. Either way, it doesn't matter.
So
go ahead. It's your show.
There was well, I apologize. Well, there was a young lady out there who was in the bathroom, and there was this. I think the correct term would be to use a bisexual boy wearing a skirt.
Okay,
And
sure.
when
That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
That's what I will say.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if I use the other word, this episode will get taken down, which is the most pathetic thing ever. But I do also post to Spotify, and if I do get taken down, you can go to Spotify and you can listen to it there, and it won't be taken down from there.
That's good to know.
It is very good to know. It's a lot of places that YouTube's guidelines are pretty crazy. So this bisexual boy wearing a skirt went into the bathroom and anally sodomized this young girl. School board found out about it. Now, this is from what I know, from what I've read. School board found out about it, just kind of brushed it off to the side. Dad found out about it, got a rape kit test done, positive for semen in her anal cavity. The father comes in to chastise the school board as he should and contact police and the proper protocols. And he was obviously upset. And the video was going around where an officer goes to grab his arm and he kind of throws his arm away, and it started a wrestle. And they were tussling. A couple officers were First off, it took a few officers to take this guy down. Shame on the officers that it took more than 2 to 3 officers to take a dude down, which, I mean, obviously I've been there with people, but this guy was enraged, rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so enraged that the school board didn't do what they're supposed to do. Child was walked away scot-free. Lo and behold, I think it was in the same time period, if not just a little bit after, that same bisexual boy in a skirt, I believe, raped another woman.
Yes.
Another young lady.
That's the reports. Yeah.
And it was either physically assaulted. The terms I've read in a couple of articles were physically assaulted, and I've read that he raped another young female. And they just let it go. One of the statements that they made was, well, this isn't a very common thing. That's
cop out.
Whatever happened to believe all women?
Right. Yeah,
whatever happened to that?
Right.
Whatever happened to every life matters? It changes. Things change. I hope that whoever's listening to this, they notice that, oh, I'm sorry, dude. I've got 2 cameras. I've had to sit on you the whole time to listen. My bad. Whatever happened to that? That is what's blowing my mind. I try to stay as in the middle of things, because there's Democrats that have good policies out there. There are some good policies that are Democratic policies, and there's some good policies that are Republican, that are on the Republican side. I admit to that. There are good things to both sides. I've got friends that are Democrats and liberals and far leftists, and I love them. And they've got some good ideas, which I wish we can bring into society. But you sit there and you use the experiments on other cities and other states, and you see how, or even countries, and you're like, dude, that doesn't work. It's got a 0% working rate everywhere in the world. How can we get something similar to that? How can you get people motivated for one, the universal income that the Asian guy that was running
Andrew
for president,
Yang,
Andrew Yang. He even said it himself. He goes, I am not a math Asian. Well, then you should not be the guy talking about that.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to do that.
And you as a taxpayer, I mean, when I remember his policy came out, like $1,000 a month or whatever. How about you just cut my taxes by that? Don't take my taxes, my tax dollars, and then funnel through and then give it back to me. Just cut my taxes.
Give me a tax break.
But that's not the aim. The aim isn't.
No.
But we know the game is different.
On the average, for the U.S. citizen, I hate to say this, like a lot of people will get upset, which I think Trump was a good president. He was a moron a lot of the times, but I still think he did a pretty good job, I would say. I loved the way he talked because he was very real, which is what I enjoyed. And it made me feel like, you know what, it's not just a push-posh position where you have to pretend that you're better than everybody else. You could be a real person and do it. And he also couldn't be bought, whatever you think. You as an average salaried citizen had more money in your bank account at the end of the year for taxes than with Obama. The average raised income was $1,200 with Obama, and for Trump it was, I believe, $4,800 if not $5,200. If that doesn't tell you anything, you had more money in your pocket at the end of his term, and on top of that, gas was pretty low. And people were like, "Well, that wasn't Trump." Come on, bub.
Okay.
Do some research, and I'm not saying that everybody should vote one way or the other. Do your own research. Whatever you think is best, vote for that candidate. But if you're going to complain about fuel prices now, that wasn't Trump. That fuel prices now were clearly one person to blame,
Right.
and it's Joe Biden.
Yeah. It's
Former Vice President Joe Biden. I'm not going to say the other word because he doesn't deserve that title. But that's just my thing. But just doing basic research, and that comes right back to your school boards doing the basic research, which I think this whole schoolboardaudit.com thing is fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, and that's what it comes.
You're able to do research to find out who these people are. What are your values?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I'm sending out the questionnaire I talked about earlier to the candidates, but I'm also, I sent it out to some school board members. I've not gotten anything back on that at all, and I'm kind of thinking they're probably not going to. But I invite any school board member that wants to see the questionnaire, wants to fill it out, whatever. I'm happy to provide that, and they can fill that out, and we can kind of curate. That's me, sorry.
No, that's right. I was like, wondering what that sound was. I'm like, is it the wind chimes outside?
Sorry. But yeah, I mean, we want to know your positions. I mean, and I don't care what your positions are. I want people are whether they're busy or just unable, whatever the issue is, people, they don't want to do the research. And I think that's the problem that exists in our society, our busy society now. You don't have time, whatever. And that's what they bank on. They bank on the fact that you're not going to know what they're doing, or you're going to forget, whatever. And we're trying to be everyone's memory. This is what they stand for. This is what they stood for. This is what they're saying. Does it jive with how they have voted? So we just want to make sure people have access to that information. And we're trying to make it very simple, right? And just to kind of go back to what you were talking about with Loudoun County, it does dovetail nicely into what we were talking about. This is what happened to that child, was unbelievable. It was both of them. But as a father, I mean, on a smaller scale, it goes right back to the TBRI we were talking about, right? So my daughter was victimized, but the concern was about, the person who perpetrated that, not my daughter. And the same thing here, that school board decided that the bisexual skirted person, their protection was more important than the protection of the child that was raped. I mean, it's just unbelievable. That's the outlook, and that's what's happening, and that's why people are enraged, and that's why Loudoun County really has been ground zero. They've made a lot of mistakes out there at that school board, and it's just there's not been a lot of transparency. I think that's another big issue. There's been this shroud of, like Jack Russell doing the virtual this week,
Let's talk about that real quick. So with a few weeks ago, there was an issue at the school board meeting that they had one evening that the parents were. Now, I'll tell you what I heard from the news.
Sure.
That it was a riot, that the parents were screaming and yelling, threatening the school board members. They were feeling so attacked that almost all of the school board members called it for the end of minutes, and they ran out of there, except for one. And that's what I heard from the news, making it seem like it was pretty bad. You were there. My brother was there as well, and I talked with my brother, and I asked him what was going on. He said, it was not orderly and normal with how other school board meetings have gone. He said, but definitely not what the news is saying.
No.
So were you there that night?
I was there.
You were there. So what happened that night?
Well, they started out the evening.
That one
fateful night, right? It was a sultry evening. They started out with, we're in the parking lot, almost like having a tailgate before the meeting starts. And they brought out a large monitor. And it was pretty clear, okay, so they're going to try to, make an accommodation to have people who are unwilling to wear the masks outside so they can watch, right? So that was pretty clear what they were going to do. So we get in there, and I tracked down Dr. Arkanoff and Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor is the assistant superintendent, and I just asked a question. I said, "Hey, Franklin had just had a school board meeting outside." I said, "Is there any way that we can I see you set the TV up outside. If you want to eliminate even the potential for any problems with masks, let's just move it outside. It's a beautiful evening. It's 75, 80 degrees outside. It should be fine." And I guess that from an Indiana open door law, I guess I will defer that this is true. I'll stipulate that. I mean, Dr. Arkanoff said that you can only have the meeting in the place that you advertised it 48 hours in advance by law. And I think having it out side of the same room you advertise, it would qualify. But whatever, they didn't want to take a chance, and that's their call.
On that end, I will go ahead and say that sounds like it would be a good call to make. Like, hey, we didn't advertise it. If it comes back on them, would I truly think it? Do you need to take that?
Nope.
Okay. Do I think it would come back on them at all? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think
Personally,
so.
I don't think so.
But I think that is consistent with how this administration has ran things. They've been very much, timid. I'll use timid as in not a derogatory way. Just they've been timid about wanting to toe any lines or cross any lines. So that's fine. They decided that's what they wanted to do.
But also by doing that, by being timid and not crossing lines, you are still going to be, by appeasing to one side, you are upsetting another.
Absolutely. So the incidents that took place inside that room, I'm just saying they could have been avoided completely a couple different ways. But that was, I think, a reasonable compromise would have been to just have it outside. But they didn't do that. So the school board comes in, and Jack Russell's the president, and he calls the meeting, to start. And he immediately says that masks are mandated in the building and you have to wear a mask. And if you're not wearing a mask, you need to leave. And that caused him some problems, as rightfully it should, right? We were parents. We were grown men and women inside that room. And the understanding and the way they presented the mask issue is that it's a dress code issue. Well, guess what? I'm not subject to the school's dress code. That is not something that I have to abide by as a parent. The dress code is for the kids, right?
Which, by the way, with the dress code, I think is an absolute joke.
Oh,
at Center Grove, it's an absolute joke.
Yeah.
I was driving by, and I saw a young female who had her butt cheeks hanging out of the bottom of her shorts. And then I went and spoke with somebody about it, and they said, you can do that. It's part of the dress code. I said, that is an absolute joke. I said, but you can't wear a hat.
You can't wear a hat.
And I was like, wait a second.
And you can't have your nostrils. I mean, you can have your butt cheeks hanging out, but you can't have your nostrils hanging out.
That's what are we teaching? Yeah. That's absolute. I would love to speak with whoever I want to talk to whoever is enforcing the dress code or whoever's idea it was, because the guy is either a pervert, or if it's a female, she's just wanting to, do the whole like slut walk stuff.
Right.
I think they're a pervert because they're letting that happen. Like when I went to school, you could, if your arm sat down to your side, at your fingertips, if your shorts or capris or whatever you were wearing weren't past that, you were going home.
That's right.
You're going home and you change clothes. Like, what happened to that? Oh no, we let our kids twerk in the hallways.
Right.
Like, but God, you cannot say Trump was the president the greatest. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
there's obviously something going on. Which
Sure.
A lot of parents, I will say this, parents will ignore that.
Yeah.
Or they want to be cool with their kids. Sorry, I gotta get comfortable.
Oh, you're good.
They want to be best friends with their kids and let that stuff happen. I think it's disgusting.
Yeah, I think it's disgusting too. I've told my kids we can be friends when you're 25. Up until then, I'm your father, and
Yeah, my mom told me. She said, "I'm not here to be your friend."
That's absolutely right.
And I was like, "What?
You'll have enough friends.
Do you love me?" She goes, "If you get arrested, you're on your own."
Yeah.
What's that, Mom?
I told my kids, I'm like, I don't have any friends. This is when they're younger. I don't have any 12 or 13-year-old friends. Thank you very much. And as a 12 or 13-year-old, you shouldn't have any 30-year-old friends yourself,
Very
right?
true.
So we don't do friends. You're my kid, and I'm your boss.
Speaking of friends, the terminology, the words being used in school. I know that I'm cutting in a lot, but this is something that I just witnessed recently. We were doing an event with where I work at a school, and the lady kept saying friends. Listen here, friends. Listen, come on, make 2 lines, friends, an orange line and a blue line. And I said, do you mind if I ask why you're saying just friends? I never was called friend. I was called student or child or my name, Matt. Or most of the time they couldn't figure out which one I was. It was me or my brother, so they would just say, my last name.
Stumpo.
Or student, come here. And they said, well, the term student defines as somebody who is beneath. So you can't say the word student. She said, we were told to not say student. Wow. And I said, so why orange and blue? They said, well, you can't say boys and girls. Oh. And I said, you can't say boys and girls. And she goes, nope. That's good to know. So what are we teaching? What are we teaching our kids?
Yeah, I mean that's.
I mean, if you follow politics at all, Again, dude, I'm sorry for interrupting,
No,
but
you're
this
good.
is something that does get annoying. If you follow politics at all and follow what the mainstream media is pushing, and also what a lot of school boards are letting happening with the CRT and with the SCL and all that type of stuff, they're pushing that gender is a fluid thing. It's something that I listened to a podcast, and this guy, it was a joke. It was an absolute joke. The podcast wasn't a joke. It was a joke to listen to it. But the guy said, "Oh, I'm gender fluid. I float in and out of being a boy, a girl, and a trans in the conversations, or a man, a woman." And as he's in the interview, mid-question, he changes. He said, "Well, I'm a girl now, and you have to refer to me as a female." And I'm listening to this interviewer like, "Oh, okay." He just turns suit and falls in. And I'm like, "Wait a second, this is confusing." Because if you can identify as a girl, which comes back to boys going into the girls' bathrooms, which I don't know about you, I find that as an issue.
Oh, it's
Because
appalling.
if I can go into, which I would never do it unless I've accidentally walked into them, because before, like when I was in Mexico, I didn't, it was hombres and something else, but like I just wasn't paying attention, and I walked into the females restroom. Thank God nobody was in there. And I turned right back around. I was like, why are there stalls everywhere? Where's the urinal? And then I turned around and walked out. But as a grown man, I should not be going into a woman's restroom, because what if there are predators out there? You're giving them a free pass to go into a woman's restroom, which there's a good possibility of a young female child that he can easily take advantage of.
Correct.
How are we protecting women's rights at that point?
You're not.
You're not protecting women's rights at all.
No,
You're
and,
just protecting the loudest voice, which just so happens to be that guy who thinks he's a girl,
right.
and going into the female's restroom. You can think you're a girl all you want. You still got to go to the dude's restroom,
Right.
because of the chance of the opportunity that we're putting these young girls in, that they could be physically assaulted or raped, which is a problem. But it's coming back to even in our schools. They don't let adults go into children's bathrooms, which is a good thing. Thank God they do that. They enforce that pretty well. But they're letting boys go into when you were in elementary school, what was the one thing that you wanted to do all the time? Be around girls all the time.
Yeah.
You wanted to flirt with girls. Like you're stupid. Like I was stupid, and I was probably say and do things that I shouldn't have done, which I thank God I was punished for. But you get these young boys that are especially going through puberty. They're high testosterone. Their
Hormones going crazy.
Hormones
Yep.
are going insane. And oh yeah, by the way, you can go into the girls' restroom if you think you're a girl. What are you going to do in there? I don't even want. It shouldn't be happening.
It's ridiculous.
But they're letting it happen.
They are letting it happen.
They're letting it happen, and these school boards aren't being held accountable because they're letting this happen. This go on as well.
Yeah, and there's I will give Synagogue credit for not allowing that to happen. Clark Pleasant, on the other hand, I just updated their school board with their voting records, et cetera. And I will attach certain policies, and I'll highlight things that I think are really important that are national conversations.
Which is a Whiteland school, correct?
Which is a Whiteland school, correct?
That was the school I was referring to. That I was.
Yeah, and it's policy 4004, and they just had their president and vice president step down. It was Beth Poe as president and Laura Cope as the vice president. Yes. So
this is her old house.
Oh, interesting.
Wow,
very interesting.
I am 99% sure because I still get her mail.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And it's been 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she stepped down.
I'm kind of certain from the mail that from the front page of the mail. I don't open the mail. I've tried to contact her a couple of times to get it back, but I haven't.
Well, maybe you could try just contacting the school because that's where she.
Yeah.
So, but she stepped down just a few days ago, and so did Laura Cope, and there's some conversations that take place from that, and in the questions we're asking, are these good people that are stepping down? Are these people that were for us, or and I think for me, I've just been saying this kind of ad nauseum. It's that any board member who would vote in favor of policy 4004 that would allow someone to choose their pronoun and then use that bathroom in that locker room, you're off in my book, period. Now that's my opinion. So for me, I would none of the board members that exist at Clark Pleasant now would ever get my vote because they voted unanimously in favor of that policy.
Now, with that being said,
Mm-hmm.
you can use the Jordan B. Peterson mindset or thought behind it. He was a professor in Toronto, Canada. Truly fantastic. I've got a couple of his books. I've read
he's a
them
great guy.
twice, both. I love him. He's more liberal. I mean, he's
Absolutely.
more towards the left. But with his problem was in Canada. I mean, I've had this discussion before. We're the last place with true freedom of speech. We truly,
Correct.
we're the only one that has it that is true. You can look and they'll be like,
Except
oh,
on
there's-
this channel.
correct
on YouTube.
on YouTube. But
Yeah.
you look and you're like, well, Canada has free speech. Okay, so go ahead. And there was a guy that got in trouble for this joke. He taught his dog how. I don't even think I can talk about it on. Dude, this is how crazy it is.
Yeah, you just gotta look it up.
I can't really explain exactly what the dog did, or else from reading online, you get your video taken down off of YouTube. But he taught his girlfriend's dog how to do a sign that in the 40s was a popular thing in Germany.
Okay, sure.
Taught his
Yes.
girlfriend's dog that, and he got put towards the Human Rights Tribunal in Canada, and I believe is serving prison time for it.
Wow.
For a joke.
For a
Now,
joke.
Whether he's out now or not, it's irrelevant because the fact that it got put towards a Human Rights Tribunal for a joke.
Yeah, it's a consequence for a joke.
Correct.
Yeah,
And it
it's
was
ridiculous.
a dog that did it. It wasn't even
Wasn't
him.
even
that
him,
did it.
right.
And whatever side of the fence you are or not, you should have the freedom of speech to say whatever you want, whether it's stupid or whether it's correct. Now, there's the obvious. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater unless there's a fire in
Right.
a crowded theater. And that's the type of issues that were going on. But what he was talking about, Jordan B. Peterson was talking about at his college that he taught at, was there's a difference between compelled speech and speech that is just, hey, oh, sorry, dude, I did it again. I need to have somebody here that clicks back and forth for me.
You're good.
I need like a young Jamie, like a Joe Rogan's got. But there's a difference. Like if I identified as a female and I said my pronouns are she, her, and this is my name, it's Madeline, not Matt. You as a respectful person, let's say you're Jordan Peterson, he'd say, okay, if that's what you want me, if you want me to call you Madeline, for you as a person, because I respect you, I'll call you Madeline. Then that was it. But the government came in and mandated that you will notify this person as a female. Well, what about biology?
Right. What about science?
What about science? Science only counts in certain things. Science counts with
Right.
COVID, and science counts with it doesn't count with human biology and chromosomes. But that was his issue, which is why he became so popular 6-7 years ago, or 5 to 6 years ago, something
Yeah,
like that.
something like
That's
that.
when he
Mhm.
started to become very popular because he was standing for freedom of speech, saying, "Hey, you will not compel me for this speech. I will do it when I feel necessary." Which I've met people that thought they were women and they wanted me to talk to them as a woman, and I mean, I'd say, "What's your name?" Because I'm not going to say she, her, they, them. But what's your name? I'll say your name. That's what I'll do. If I see you walking into the female's restroom, it's a little bit different. I'm not going to let that happen, and especially unless it's one that's a single by itself. Then, all right. But there's a difference between compelled speech versus being respectful to just one individual person, and that's an issue that I'm finding that there's things where if you look across the board, school boards, if you look across the board, they'll follow certain things, and then they will turn around and not follow that. The biology.
Right.
Let's talk about men and women. Men and women. And then there's people out there that think that there's more than 150 or 1,000 genders. The LGBT, LMNOP people with the plus and signs and all that stuff. Ask anybody. Look it up anywhere. They will not define how many there are. They will not define it. Well, what does that stop? When does that stop? At what point do we stop with it? School boards are being influenced
Right.
to let this stuff run rampant.
Right. Because they're working more with the administration than the community.
Correct.
And that's where
Correct.
we have problems.
Correct. And I had a discussion with a teacher of one of the schools in Center Grove, and they talked about, we need to have a mask mandate for all kids. Well, why don't we let the parents talk with the kids and say, hey, little Lisa, we're going to talk with you. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't wear a mask. Or even if the child's got a comorbidity, if they've got some issues that are health issues that can put them at a higher risk, now you could talk about the severe health hospitalizations of children. We can talk about deaths with COVID, and look at what Johns Hopkins said. But look what the CDC and Johns Hopkins disagrees with the CDC's numbers are, because they're saying the children that have died from COVID is a little over 500 in the past almost 2 years now. They said almost every single one of those kids had a severe comorbidity that they would have died from the normal flu. Why aren't we looking at that? But we're just looking at what the problem is. We're not looking at other possible solutions or treatments. Not saying that there's other treatments that cure COVID, because you have to say that on YouTube or else you get taken off. So, but there's issues of, why don't we talk about taking care of our health benefits, our immune systems, or immunocompromised? Why don't we talk about that?
We should. I mean, those are great conversations to have. And that's, people have called me a witch doctor. I believe in homeopathy. I mean, I've studied a lot of it, and we do a lot of natural medicines, and we've been, very healthy because of it, I believe. But, to kind of round back to what happened at the school board meeting with the mask.
Dude, I'm so sorry. We got off on a rampage.
Tangent, no problem.
I'm so sorry.
But that's fine. But there was definitely an atmosphere of pushback from the community when they were told they had to wear masks. And what I find really interesting about that is it's just so overbearing, and it really is something that, we are adults, and you have to allow people to be able to express themselves and do the things that they want. You can't have control over other people. This is the big problem that I think is existing. Tucker Carlson talked about this the other night. I thought it was really well said. It's that you basically don't have left and right anymore. You have authoritarianism versus liberty, and if you're, anyway, so what I find interesting about this is that Carmel Clay, their school board, is well known. And I think there was a viral video that came out about them getting up and walking out, a few weeks ago. But Alvin Liu is doing amazing work up there, Unify Carmel. If you're not familiar with them, definitely check them out. Alvin Liu's interesting story. He was from California. He left California because he was worried about CRT and what was going on in the school systems. And he was concerned about his daughter's education. So he moved out here, and he's seeing the same things happening. So now he's trying to proactively get in front of it, so he's doing.
You can watch what happens in New York and California, and just give it a year or two. Because I said the same thing 2 years ago at work, and the guys were laughing at me saying it wasn't going to happen. And lo and behold, it's here. It's
happening. Yep.
In our own cities.
And so their school board, they open their meeting the same way that Center Grove does, and their president, Layla Spannenberg, I think's her name. She opens the meeting, and she does say, it's, masks are required, so please put on a mask. And you can see from the shot, you can see the crowd, and about maybe 2 or 3 people put masks on, and there's about 5 or 6 that do not. And then they just carry on with the meeting. I mean, this is Carmel Clay, which is, theoretically, a more authoritarian type of school board. But Jack Russell couldn't let it rest. I mean, he really could have he had options, right? The first one I presented to Dr. Arkanoff, whether it would have worked or not, that's debatable. I don't think anyone would have, enforced, but whatever, if they could have had it outside or not because of the 48-hour rule. But, just start the meeting, and you can tell people to mask up, and then just start the meeting and just go. I mean, that could have been resolved rather easily, but they refused, and they just recessed the meeting, got up and walked out. And for about an hour, Dr. Arkanoff and, Joe Hubbard came out and talked a little bit too. And the compromise was finally reached that the parents who did not want to wear masks would go outside, and they would open up the doors so that they could hear what was going on. And that's kind of what happened. So it's so ridiculous. I mean, you have, a double door, glass double door, people outside, and 6 inches inside. So you've got the difference of 6 inches, wear a mask or don't wear a mask. It's just ridiculous, and you've got everybody huddled together. And then they started the meeting, and then, there wasn't really any heckling until there was some attempts to shut people down. And, Dr. Kara Cecil got up to speak, and then Brittany Carroll also got up to speak. And while Brittany was talking, Jack Russell was kind of but both of them actually, he was banging the gong or banging the gavel and saying, this is off topic or whatever, and was trying to shut down their speech, and it was making people angry. And so there wasn't anything hateful said about anyone, like on a personal level. It was more like, Jack, you need to resign or you're going to get voted out, things like that. That's not a personal attack. You're a public official who's been voted into office.
You're a public servant.
Public servant. That's a better way to say it.
You are serving the people that you work for.
And they're just saying that you're going to get voted out. And I just think that,
I hope people remember. Exaggerated. I don't know who he is. He might be a really nice guy. He might actually want to come and talk on here, which I would totally let him.
Sure.
But if the people in your area, your district, or your city are very upset with you and they vote you out, hey, clearly you were doing something wrong.
Right.
Or their minds changed. They wanted to do something different. It's what the people want.
Right. And like you said at the beginning, this could be a vocal minority, but I think when you look at what's going on across the county and you go to any grocery store or whatever, people are not masked up. I mean, this is not a vocal minority in the sense that it's a small percentage of people who don't want masks. It's a large percentage of people who don't want masks, but it's a small group that's actually standing up and saying anything, right? And there's evidence of this not only just by walking around and physically seeing it yourself at every place that you go where people aren't wearing masks, but I did a records request and I got about 2 months worth of emails from the school board. And I was told individually, and then they were told collectively that the mask debate, that there were actually more people that were emailing the board saying that they wanted masks than there were saying that they didn't. And I'm like, I don't believe that. So I got the records request, and the records request, I would say it's a good 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 inches thick. And of all these individual pieces of paper, only 10 people had responded that they wanted masks on the kids.
Really?
So it's just an out and out lie. So we talk about transparency. It's just an out and out lie. I mean, so we're looking at things, there's ESSER money, ESSER 1, 2, and 3 is something that, has some strings tied to it. It's federal grant money that goes to the state, and then the states bring it down to the locals. It's all ran through the Indiana Department of Education, and there's certain criteria you have to meet. And in the ESSER 3, there's question 4, and then there's like 9 subcategories. And the question was, how are you going to, accommodate or make reasonable accommodations for the following things, and all these 9 bullets. And the first bullet is universal masking and proper wearing. So to get the funds, you have to ask the question, right? If you're going to follow CDC recommendations and local health recommendations on these topics, and if they're saying you have to follow this to get the money, is that what this is about? Is it a money grab? I mean, this is $4 million for Center Grove on these ESSER funds. But you keep looking down, and another thing that's in there is vaccine clinics. So, I use this, this is something that is not just with school boards, it's with all things in politics and life, I guess. But you have a thesis, you have an antithesis, and then you get synthesis. And this is the cycle that just keeps going and going and going. So let's use what happened with the schools last year, right? When the sickness came, right? So they shut down. Yeah. So you have a thesis is, as a community, we want our kids in school. The antithesis of that is that because of the current events, we have to go virtual and shut the school down. So the synthesis becomes, okay, well, we can open the schools back again, but now you have to wear a mask in order to do so, right? So then, you've got a new thesis, which is you go to school, but you have to wear a mask. The thesis is still we want our kids to be in school. The antithesis is, you have to wear a mask to go, and you want to get rid of the mask. Okay, well then the synthesis is, you have to get a vaccine. And this is what they do every time there is one position and then an opposite position. There's a synthesis, a compromise, but it always pushes to the left. It doesn't push towards more freedom or more rights. It always pushes away from it.
Well, if you look at what has happened in the last 2 years I can switch over to myself, I guess. Dude, I am so bad at this. Sorry. If you look at what's been going on in the last 2 years, have you been more free or less free?
Oh, definitely less free, right?
You sure?
Absolutely.
But the government told me that I'm more free as ever. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing. Like, are you a freer person, or as a society, are we freer at the beginning of this or not? People will sit there and they will just ignore. I've heard this so many times. Dude, it's just 15 days.
Right.
It's just 15 days.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. It's 15 days. 15 days is come and gone. That's over 500 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, we're only going to shut down just for a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that happened for a few months. Hey, you only got to wear a mask for a little bit, man. All right, I guess so. Hey, it's only just a vaccine.
Right.
All right. Hey, it's only a second shot, because the first one wasn't. You got to get the antibodies built up inside. Hey, it's only a booster shot. Hey, it's only another booster shot. Hey, it's only a vaccine card. It's only something that you got to have just to show that you were vaccinated. Hey, it's only a vaccine card to get into this restaurant. Go ahead, look at New York. Mm-hmm. It's only a vaccine to go to a movie. Oh, a vaccine card that you have to show to go to a movie. It's anywhere you want to go in New York, you have to provide a vaccine card. Look at what's going on in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what I'm getting at. I have this is just my thoughts. I think a lot of people generally just whatever's convenient I'll do. Whatever's convenient I'll do. If I gotta get this shot to still keep my job at work, all right, I guess I'll do it just to keep my job. Oh, hey, if I want to go out and about and do this or whatever, I'll do it just because I don't care.
Right.
But there's other people out there that's like, wait a second, why are you having to tell me what to do? When there's so much more that goes into this. Logically, there are people out there that, yes, you do need to get the vaccine, especially if you've got comorbidities and you're older, because it's shown statistically that it is helping them. If you're younger, you're at a lower percentage of dying from COVID-19. The percentage of if under 55 and under, I believe, was a 99.5.
Sure.
I believe
Sounds
that's
about
what
right.
I believe that's what the number was. At that point, why can't you just let that person make their own choice?
Right.
And then if somebody doesn't want to get vaccinated, that should be their choice. They don't want to. And if the position at that person's employer says that you have to be vaccinated while if you want to keep your employment here, all right. I mean, you make a decision. Either you leave or you go get vaccinated. But it's sad that it's come to that point, because what they're not doing is looking at the statistical numbers, which is something that I like to do. If that person makes their own choice, like it's a risk of benefit assessment. Like, I'd rather just get COVID. Which also, by the way, there have been scientific studies done, which science only counts whenever it's on whoever side you're on.
Right.
Go ahead and say that. But there are scientific studies done, especially the Israeli study, that show that you are 27 times less likely to contract COVID a second time with natural immunity versus vaccine immunity. Now, you can take that as in natural immunity is 27 times stronger than vaccine immunity, or you can say you're just 27 times less likely to contract COVID a second time with natural immunity. Why isn't that being talked about? Why aren't a lot of things being talked about?
Because that's free.
Because it's free, because they don't cost money. They don't make
why.
money. $19 billion a quarter for Pfizer, I believe it is what they're making. But why aren't those things being talked about? It's just a question of, I hope this episode doesn't get taken down, but there's the possibility that it can get taken down just because we're discussing it.
Yeah.
And discussing what the CDC even talks about. What the CDC talks about is you still have to wear a mask even being vaccinated, because you can or you may still get COVID and transmit COVID. There are policies out there in workplaces that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. But if you're unvaccinated, you have to wear a mask. Even if I've had COVID before and I've got antibodies that are stronger than most vaccine immunity, well, yeah, because you're unvaccinated. So it makes zero sense, but per the CDC, you should still be wearing a mask.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
What are we going off of? Why don't we let our own people make their own decisions?
And that's what it should come down to, right? I mean, I'm not anti.
It should.
I'm not anti-vax. I'm not anti-mask.
But it doesn't. Yeah.
And people try to label you that, but I don't care if you wear a mask or not. That's totally up to you. I don't want you pushing your choices on me. You're the one that is pushing your choices on me. If you want to take the vaccine, by all means do so. If I don't, then that doesn't mean I'm against you taking it. It's just I want to make a different choice for myself. That's called freedom. And that's what we're supposed to have. And just kind of round this back. I mean, you make a good point about about the vax and masks and everything. And this week, Dr. Qualls is the Johnson County, health department. He's kind of the head of that, and he signed off on Franklin's new, policy is regarding the mask, and they immediately took masks off kids, and they're still quarantining. I think it's within 3 feet, the contact tracing and such. Greenwood did the same thing, and Center Grove was, from what I was being told, was set to do the exact same thing, but they added a wrinkle to it. And the wrinkle is that now there's no quarantining. Is what they're selling it as. But if you actually read it, it's not quite what they're saying. I mean, it is a no quarantine for a certain group of people. So the reality is that they are taking the mask off kids, not immediately. It's going to be next Wednesday, the 27th. And it's tied to the county itself, whatever color coding system the COVID rate is in. Okay.
Yeah. Because
so red, yellow.
Yeah, we're in blue right now. I
believe,
or something like that.
So you have to be in that status though for 2 weeks before. So like, let's say for example, if there's an outbreak in Clark Pleasant and Edinburgh, and the county goes red, then Center Grove, even if they're not anywhere tied to this outbreak, they got to mask back up because that's what's going on in the county. And if it's there for 2 days and then it goes back down a level, back to yellow or whatever, now you got to wait 2 weeks because you have to be in the yellow status before you can take the mask off. So it's a different policy. And then when it comes to the quarantine, there's no quarantine. If you are contact traced, you have some options. So if you've not been vaccinated, you can wear a mask for 10 days. And in that 10 days, you have to go to the nurse's office every morning and then get a screening.
Do you know how their screening goes?
It doesn't. Yeah,
Mayo Clinic talked about how you should not trust any of the antibody tests.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
And the COVID test, they were saying that they wouldn't utilize most of 72%.
I think the schools are just checking temperature. I mean, I think that's
gotcha.
what they're doing. This is like a very basic screening or whatever. But they're just, I think, checking temperature and asking how they feel, making sure they're not coughing or whatever. No, they're asymptomatic. But if you have proof of vaccination, you don't have to do any of that.
Which makes no sense.
Or if you have proven that you have a positive COVID test in the last 9 months, you can forego all of that. Which I don't understand how they're going to be able to get away with that. It's a violation of FERPA. Because if you have a child who has a religious exemption against these things, you are now outing them as having a mask on their face is going to alert everyone as to what their vaccination status is. And on the flip side, by not wearing a mask and by not having to follow any of that, you're also outing that child as having, the vaccine.
Well, that's also going on in places of work as well.
Yes, that's true. The difference is that Indiana has codified. So you have a law that says you can't do these things in school. So, and for private businesses. For school, yeah.
Okay, so because there was a bill that was done that talked about that, but then at the very end of the bill it says you can't force somebody to do this and this, but at the very end it says but you can if you're the employer. It's so basically
so this is specific to the schools, right? So
specific schools.
So for the school system, it's I forget it now, but it's Indiana code. It's IC 20, I think it's 2034-5, somewhere around there. But anyway, it's talks about your religious exemptions for school age children and for college as well. I mean, they have two separate codes, but it's the same thing, just two different numbers. But it says that for religious reasons, you are exempt from testing, immunization, treatment, and examination. It's those four things. And you can have that on file. So if you're a parent who has had that on file for your kid, because maybe you don't, let's say meningitis, you don't want your, you don't like the meningitis vaccine, whatever. You don't subscribe to these vaccinations and you've had this thing, that precludes your ability to have a vaccine, which means that you would be wearing a mask. And FERPA is the Federal Education Records Privacy Act. It was, I think, 1977 or 78 is when that was enacted. And if you are a school that collects vaccination information and then provides that back to the state, which Indiana is one of these schools, then vaccination status is a protected piece of information for students. Under a state of emergency, like what we've been for 19 months or whatever, because Holcomb keeps re-signing it, there's some exceptions to that on who can see the information. But no matter what, whether executive order or emergency action, whatever, peers and other parents are never included in that. So the fact is that you're outing these kids and their vaccination status, whether they've been vaccinated or not, by having a policy that boils everything down to your status. You're no longer a good student, bad student. You're no longer a boy or girl. You are either vaccinated or you are unvaccinated. And it's fine. I mean, everyone's entitled to their own thoughts and opinions on these things. And there are some people in our community that I really respect that are really cheering this on, and they're happy about this, that masks are coming off and they're taking it as a victory. I feel differently about it. I think you're actually creating a policy that you're potentially also in violation of the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, and also the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I mean, you're treating people differently based on a status of whether they're vaccinated or not. So when you have that difference, to me, that's not a win. I mean, what Franklin did, I don't see what the problem with that is. They took the masks off and they continued to do quarantining. You know, they don't have to enforce any of this. The school boards can stand up and just say, no, we're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. And I make this point at that meeting where everybody got kicked out. When we came back together and I was talking and I said, you know, the Mooresville stood up for their board stood up for their community. And what they did was they had, instead of enforcing the mask, they just separated the classroom and they just created some distance or whatever. And they got shut down by the state. So the state came in and said, no, you can't do that. But their constituents aren't mad at the school board. The school board acted in the community's best interest. So now their anger is aimed at the state, you know, or the health department, wherever it is. But the school boards did their job. And at the end of the day, it's all we're asking them to do. Just do your job. Be the voice of the community that you're serving.
I think that'd be a good place to end.
Yeah.
Because I got to go to work. No. Is there anything else that you want to plug your website real quick and then your Facebook page as well?
Yeah, sure. So the website is www.schoolboardaudit.com. We are trying to take this thing, between now and next November. We want to get every school district on the website, and we want to get that information to every single voter. That's our goal. It's a lofty one. I don't know if we're going to get there, but that's what we're aiming for. But you can definitely visit us there. You can check out the information. There's ways to support us. Share it to everybody. Share it to all your friends. And if you have the means or you want to financially support us, this does cost money to run the site, and it absolutely costs money to try to market into other areas of the state. So if you have some, willingness to support us financially, there's a donation button there, but no obligation to do so. You can also find us on Facebook. It's School Board Audit. Just do a search on that, and we have a whole page dedicated to our website and what we're doing, and you can check us out on there.
James, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, Matt, thank you for having me on, man. I really enjoyed this.
Anytime, bud.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, you made it to the very end of the video. Thank you so much for sticking around, being patient, whether it took you 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 tries to listen to it all the way through. I understand that people have a very busy schedule. It just means so much to me that somebody takes the time to listen to this, listen to me have discussions with just random people. So thank you so much for doing that. It really does mean so much to me. Recently, we just hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but to me, that is 99 more people that I thought would ever subscribe to this. So it is the coolest thing in the world for me that there's 100 people out there that enjoyed it so much they pressed that subscribe button. So it really does mean a lot to me. I always watch that little ticker go up and go down also. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know in the comment section what your favorite thing we talked about was, or something that you didn't know that really interested, intrigued you, or surprised you. So just again, let me know down in the comment section. If you want to find me anywhere else, I'm on basically any podcast app out there. Spotify, Apple, Google, BreakerBox, CastBox, all that stuff. I'm out there as well. Also, again, other places to find James Downey is schoolboardaudit.com. I'll leave a link down at the bottom. Also, his Facebook page is School Board Audit, and I will also leave that link down at the bottom as well. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. God bless.